An October 17, 2025 report released by Dr. Stephen Greer on the BUGA Sphere dated it to be 12,560 years old. A notice was issued to the world's astronomical community concerning the start of an international campaign to track Three-Eye Atlas from November 27 through to January 26. NASA quietly activates the Planetary Defense Network for Three-Eye Atlas without saying a word. Two peer-reviewed scientific papers analyze astronomical data from 1952 showing a lineup of up to 5 UFOs in Earth orbit. Stefan Burns does an excellent job in analyzing the powerful solar reaction to Three-Eye Atlas in terms of massive CMEs and solar flares. These stories and more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to this October 25 edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. Today we are actually holding the webinar on Disclosure Truth Apocalypse Coming. So that'll be later this afternoon. And so I'm going to keep this Week in Review relatively short, and any topics that are going to be addressed in detail in the webinar, I'll just refer you to the webinar to get more information about that. So let me begin by going to this particular story concerning JP, where he put out some information concerning his experience in a medbed at Eglin Air Force Base in October 2025. He says he saw about 6 medbeds being used by covert operatives and got into one where he was healed and felt rejuvenated. So this was something we first discussed in an update earlier this year, update 39, and JP just put out a video on his YouTube channel. And the thing is, now you get to see JP without a mask, and he's giving you some extra details on his medbed experience. So that's on his YouTube channel. So for those of you that aren't familiar with JP, he is a former US Army serviceman, served for 4.5 years in the Army, was doing many covert missions involving secret space programs, trips to the inner Earth, and so forth, and has been releasing updates to me ever since. And we've known each other since 2008. Here is an interview I did with Daniel and Derek. They are the grandsons of Daniel Morris Salter, who was a prominent Disclosure Project witness. He served for over 20 years in the US Air Force and then served for an extended period in the National Reconnaissance Office, where he was responsible for helping keep the UFO issue secret, and apart from any other kind of duties he was assigned. And he wrote a book about it, and he appeared on the Disclosure Project press conference in 2001. Well, he was actually going to talk, but eventually he didn't talk because he was just, let's just say, intimidated. But his testimony appeared in a book that later appeared, and also video form that was later released by Dr. Stephen Greer. So in this interview with Daniel and Derek, we talk about their grandfather and his work with the NRO, and how his grandfather talked about the role of Freemasons in controlling the UFO issue, and how at the senior levels of leadership, the Freemasons are compromised by Satanism. And he actually said that the greatest threat facing the American public was Satanism. So this is something that is very important because it really does bring into the focus that when we're talking about the UFO issue, we're not just talking about a cover-up by the military and government. We're talking about a role played by secret societies such as the Freemasons that have been infiltrated by international Satanism, and that this is how a lot of the programs are run. And so that was, I think, a very important point made by Daniel Morris Salter. And so, yeah, I discussed it with his grandsons, as well as just the overall role played by secret societies and the Freemasons. So that's an interview that just came out this week. Here is a October 17 report released by Dr. Stephen Greer on the BUGA Sphere that's been dated to be 12,560 years old. And what I think is very relevant about that age is that that would predate Plato's estimate of 9,600 BC concerning the destruction of Atlantis. So what this suggests is that this BUGA Sphere that people saw flying around and that displayed certain kind of anti-gravity principles, that is ancient Atlantean technology that was recently activated. So that's very interesting, that Atlantean technology that's been buried for thousands of years or hidden away is now being activated. I mean, that's something that I've been hearing from various contactees for a few years now, that, you know, we have these ancient elder races, extraterrestrials coming in, or space arks being activated, and that this is activating ancient technologies on Earth. So apparently the BUGA Sphere is one of those ancient technologies. Okay, so here is an interview that Professor Avi Loeb did with on, I guess, what is it, Newsmax, where he talks about Three-Eye Atlas. And I'm going to be going into depth into Three-Eye Atlas in the webinar later today. So I won't talk too much about it right now, other than just point out that Avi Loeb is an astronomer, the former head of the Harvard University Astronomy Department, and he's been very prominent in talking about Three-Eye Atlas and how NASA has not been releasing its highest resolution photos of Three-Eye Atlas, and there's no real reason why they haven't. And he's also talking about things such as the need for an international protocol in case a black swan event occurs with Three-Eye Atlas changing direction or releasing probes that head towards the Earth. So this is something that I'll be discussing in depth in the webinar. All right, well, this is an announcement concerning the release of my book, Exopolitics, Political Implications of the Extraterrestrial Presence. It was first released in 2004. It went out of print a couple of years ago when the publisher Dandelion Press closed shop. And so I've released a 20th anniversary edition of this book. It was the first published book on exopolitics. It covered a number of issues which really weren't being covered at the time. Now there's a lot more coverage in the literature coming out, you know, concerning the different types of extraterrestrials that are out there, their motivations, their activities, categorizing them, and so forth. So this book was really the first one to do that, it really did lay out how you could understand their motivations, their activities, and also it provided a framework for analyzing the different types of extraterrestrials, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. So this is pretty much covered in the book. It also discussed some things that really today we take for common, but at the time were quite novel. I mean, super soldiers. No one was really talking about super soldiers back then. I was talking about classified space programs. Again, that was something that really wasn't being widely talked about. Also talked about the importance of ancient technologies being hidden all over the planet and being secretly sought by these entities running the UFO programs. Again, that was fairly new. I talk about stargates, and especially when it comes to ancient stargate technology in Iraq. I talk about the Nazi secret space program, how they developed the program down in Antarctica. So this book really laid out my early findings on those topics and more back in 2004. It was a very important book for me at the time because it was the one that really led to me being sacked from American University. It was this book. It was the subject of a interview I did with the Washington Post that came out in early February of 2004. And because of that interview with the Washington Post, American University at the time decided that they wanted to part ways. They did not want one of their scholars being associated with a topic that they thought was conspiracy theory. Well, now that topic of conspiracy theory that was really predicated on the revelations of many whistleblowers is finally getting attention in academia. And of course, in the US Congress, we've had hearings now with whistleblowers. But back when this book was published in 2004, whistleblowers were really ignored and ridiculed. Today, they're taken seriously. So this book really does, I think, help introduce you to some of the early whistleblower testimonies concerning what is happening in the world of exopolitics. So this is the 20th anniversary edition of Exopolitics. And so it's available in Amazon. At Amazon, I decided to publish it in a hardcover version. I mean, it feels nice. It's a hardcover version, very sturdy. So it should last for quite a while in your library, or you can get the electronic edition if you wish. All right, here's an update by Cristina Gomez on 3i Atlas and preliminary evidence from 2 observatories that it is transmitting the Fibonacci sequence, and this and other key evidence is being withheld by NASA. So this is very interesting that according to this particular story by Cristina Gomez, who has a popular YouTube channel, and she is discussing some scientific papers that the Fibonacci series is being transmitted from 3i Atlas. So that kind of like dovetails with Professor Avi Loeb's claims that 3i Atlas is behind the WOW signal from, I think, 1977. And that's because 3i Atlas comes from roughly the same area in the sky as the signal that appeared in 1977, and that was interpreted as some kind of extraterrestrial radio communication. And so I think this is something that is very significant, that 3i Atlas is associated both with the WOW signal from 1977, and now there's some radio signals it's transmitting of the Fibonacci sequence, and that this is being covered up by NASA. As I said, more on the 3i Atlas in today's Disclosure Truth Apocalypse that is going to be conducted at 3 p.m. today. Okay, so here's an important issue. On October 21st, just 4 days ago, a notice was issued to the world's astronomical community concerning the start of an international campaign to track 3i Atlas from November 27 through to January 26. So this notice really does support claims that 3i Atlas is not a normal comet and will experience a change in trajectory, and or fragments and probes will head towards the Earth. So here you have a quote from the announcement, which is the International Asteroid Warning Network, which is a United Nations body that includes includes NASA and similar scientific institutions from around the world. So definitely something very big is happening with 3i Atlas if the world's premier kind of astronomical asteroid warning network is getting astronomers to focus on 3i Atlas. They're expecting something big to happen, and I think what's going to happen is essentially there's going to be either or both a course correction and probes or fragments being released, and some of those might head towards the Earth. And so a bit more on this. Here's a kind of meme that was put out on the Planetary Defense Network being activated without actually saying a word, without actually alarming people by saying, hey, we think something very strange is going to happen with the asteroid 3 or with 3i Atlas, and we need to turn all of the astronomical equipment onto it to study it in this period from November through to January. Now, here is something that I thought was very interesting. It is the release of 2 peer-reviewed scientific papers that analyze astronomical data from 1952 showing a lineup of up to 5 UFOs in Earth orbit. So this was before Sputnik was sent up into the Earth in 1957. And importantly, the papers support Major Donald Keyhoe's claims from 1954 that 2 motherships were in Earth orbit and releasing flying saucers. He claims this was being covered up by the Silence Group, and this led to Keyhoe writing The Flying Saucer Conspiracy in 1955. So we're talking about a conspiracy that goes back at least 70 years to cover up the truth about UFOs. And here you have Donald Keyhoe saying that there were these giant motherships in Earth orbit and that the Silence Group were covering it up. And so now we actually get confirmation that, in fact, there were things in Earth orbit, that there were up to 5 UFOs that showed up on astronomical data that was examined by the authors of these scientific papers. So important corroboration, and certainly it is just helping focus people's attention on what's happening in space. All right, here is an interview I did with Jean-Charles Moyen, Past Life Memories and Ancient Space Arks, Starseed Revelations 3. So the release of this interview coincided with the official release of Jean-Charles' latest film called Starseed Revelations. And this is a video documentary he did with all of the evidence of his past life in Japan and how that was associated with a space ark under Mount Fuji in Japan, and that in his past life, both in Japan and previously as an extraterrestrial called Luca, that he was associated with space arks. So his documentary goes into details, definitely well worth seeing. Here you can see the trailer for it as well. And so in this interview, we discuss his documentary, the evidence in terms of him being teleported when only 7 to Japan and meeting a Japanese woman and then reporting all that to his parents, and that he actually brought back with him things like sand and so forth and dirt and so forth that was kind of like very unusual, given that at the time he was living in an apartment complex in Paris with his parents, and of course he was only 7 years old. So Jean-Charles Moyen, definitely take a look at that interview if you haven't already, and you can support him by buying his latest video, Starseed Revelations 3. I mean, he's very credible. He is one of the few contactees that actually makes a big effort to gather a lot of evidence to support his claims. He's not into storytelling. He's into revealing what he's experienced and giving you the evidence for that. So that's very unusual in the contactee community. Okay, Stefan Burns. I mean, he is a geophysicist who now specializes in examining space weather, and he has been examining 3I Atlas and how it has been interacting with the sun as 3I Atlas approaches perihelion. So again, I'll be talking about this at length in my webinar later today, but the important thing here is that 3I Atlas and the sun are having an interaction, that they, in fact, as Burns points out, they are having a communication, and a huge coronal mass ejection that was released. So here you have Stefan Burns showing some satellite of 3I Atlas interacting with the sun. So you're going to see an enormous coronal mass ejection being released by the sun in the direction of 3I Atlas, which is presently on the opposite side of the sun to us. So that coronal mass ejection is heading towards the sun. There it is. So you can see this enormous, there you go, that enormous coronal mass ejection. So Stefan Burns goes into detail into that, and that is much more than just a coronal mass ejection being directed towards 3I Atlas, which is on the opposite side of the sun. As he points out, it's a communication. There's an interaction happening, and that interaction and that communication is introducing frequencies and codes from interstellar space, and different sources describe ancient extraterrestrials who have coded 3I Atlas. And so that means that these codes and frequencies are now being transmitted to the sun, which is going to be transmitting these to the rest of the solar system. So I think this is a very important development, which is why 3I Atlas is something that we really do need to focus on. Okay, so here is a New York Post article discussing the International Asteroid Warning Network concerning 3I Atlas. And unfortunately, what it does is that it really does indulge in fear-mongering. And it takes off or uses the information from Avi Loeb that 3I Atlas is a Trojan horse spacecraft which may represent a black swan event for humanity. And that is very interesting, because I think Loeb's background, where he has worked in the military intelligence community before becoming an astronomer, his background was in military intelligence with Israel's military. He was part of their Talpiot program. And so he has an extensive, let's say, background or connection to the military intelligence world, and he's seeding these ideas of 3I Atlas being a threat, some kind of unknown threat to humanity. And so major media are picking up on his hypotheses and running with it. And because he's a former chair of Harvard's Department of Astronomy, he's just getting, he's got the megaphone, he's out there, and he's getting people to think of Three-Eye Atlas and framing it in terms that he is putting out there. And it's largely kind of all about this threat, this Trojan horse, this dark forest hypothesis, releasing probes that may be related to AI. So, I mean, he's putting out a lot of information that does encourage fear-mongering, and that lends to this idea of a false flag event involving Three-Eye Atlas. So that's something I will be discussing in the webinar today. So let me finish by saying the webinar today, it's going to be at 3 o'clock East Coast time, 12 o'clock Pacific time, and I believe that is going to be 7 p.m. GMT. So that is something you can confirm just by going to the website for this particular webinar, exopolitics.org. It gives you the details for where to go. I'm going to have two fabulous panelists joining me, George Cavassalis and JP. George Cavassalis has received a lot of very important information on Three-Eye Atlas and what it represents, and this is very important for the future. So he'll be talking about that and what it all means for our future as a planet. JP similarly has received information about Three-Eye Atlas and what it means for us. And both of them also talk about these additional asteroids or comets that have come into our solar system and what they really are. And you're going to see that this is going to all culminate in a disclosure truth apocalypse. So I hope you can join me today in that webinar. The details for registration are on exopolitics.org. And if you are a Patreon supporter, you can get discounts depending on your tier membership level, or even get to do the webinar for free. There is one tier of membership, the Galactic Patron, where you get to do all my webinars for free, just by becoming a tier 3 member. So thanks to all of you who have joined my Patreon account and are members. Your support is really appreciated. You make all the difference in terms of me being able to put out a lot of free stuff, such as this week in review. And of course, I put this out along with interviews 12 times or 13 times a week, a month, and all of that is for free. So thanks to all of you who subscribe to Patreon or support me by attending these webinars, and that's another great way to support my work. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you later today. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.